Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video I have something different for you from my usual content. This is going to be a series where I will be explaining the rise and fall of the Wild West. This is going to be the first installation of many, so buckle in, grab you something good to eat or drink, or both, and thank you for watching. The Wild West was a time plagued with death and destruction that paved the way for industrialism and entrepreneurship in the early days of the United States. Many of the events from then are still felt today, and the reason I want to make this series is to explain how an entire society and economy were created and eventually died. But to do that correctly, I need to go back to the very beginning. No, not the beginning of time, the beginning of the West. To do that, I need to explain the beginning of America, as the founding of the nation impacts relations later on. So let's go back to 1450 with the birth of a man named John Cabot, the first man to lay claim to the American continent for England. But before we start, I want to say much of the info we have on John is shaky at best, with only a few ironclad pieces of evidence remaining today. I also want to say that I only know how to speak English, and my pronunciation will be terrible at best. With that being said, let's begin. John Cabot was born in 1450, likely in Geta, as what little evidence we have points to that being his birthplace. In 1471, John was accepted in the religious confraternity of the Scala Grande di San Giovanni Evangelista in Venice, Italy. This is one of Venice's most prestigious confraternities, and his acceptance suggests he was already a respected member of the community. John gained his full Venetian citizenship in 1476, which made him able to engage in maritime trade, which he presumably did shortly after, as a 1483 document refers to him selling a slave in Crete, whom he acquired in the territories of the Sultan of Egypt. John also claimed to have visited Mecca, which he told a Milanese ambassador in London in 1497, but there's no evidence to support John's claim. Despite this claim, with John's Mediterranean trade, he acquired better knowledge of Eastern merchandise than most Europeans at that time. In 1484, it's indicated that John married a woman named Matea and had already had 3 sons with her, these being Ludovico, Sebastian, and Sancto. In the late 1480s, John got into some financial trouble and fled Venice by November 5th, 1488. John moved to Valencia, Spain, where his creditors tried to get him arrested by sending a letter of recommendation to justice. After this, he apparently became infatuated with construction for some reason, as he tried to build many things, including improvements to Venice's harbor, which was rejected, and the construction of a stone bridge in Seville, which he was actually contracted to build, but after 5 months, the city abandoned the project on December 24th, 1494. John then sought support in Seville and Lisbon for an Atlantic expedition before moving to London in mid-1495 to look for funding and support. He bounced around England and eventually Bristol, seeking financial backers, and in 1496 Cabot found it by way of a royal patent from King Henry VII. In the summer of that same year, Cabot's first voyage took place, and drumroll please, it was a failure. Little is known of his first voyage, but what is documented is a letter sent from one John Day, otherwise known as the John Day Letter. This was a letter presumably sent to Christopher Columbus, and little was said of that first voyage by Day, but here's what was written. Since your lordship wants information relating to the first voyage, here's what happened. He went with one ship, his men confused him, and he was short of supplies, and he decided to make a turn back. It seems Cabot was no better at exploration than he was at building bridges. John then decided to make a second voyage in 1497, and most of the information about that voyage comes from 4 short letters and an entry in a 1565 chronicle of the city of Bristol. The chronicle entry for 1496 to 97 says this: This year on St. John the Baptist Day, 24th of June 1497, the land of America was found by the merchants of Bristol in a ship of Bristol called the Matthew. The which said ship departed from the port of Bristol on the 2nd day of May, and came home again on the 6th of August, next following. So on the 24th of June 1497, John Cabot landed in what has been designated by the governments of the UK and Canada as Cape Bonavista in Newfoundland. Cabot is reported to have landed only once during the expedition, and did not advance past, quote, beyond the shooting distance of an arrow. Pasqualago and Day both state that the expedition made no contact with any native people. The crew found the remains of a fire, a human trail, nets, and a wooden tool. The crew appeared to have remained on land just long enough to take on fresh water. They also raised the Venetian and Papal banners, claiming the land for the King of England and recognizing the religious authority of the Roman Catholic Church. After this landing, Cabot spent some weeks discovering the coast, with most discovered after turning back. On return to Bristol, Cabot rode to London to report to the king. On the 10th of August 1497, he was given a reward of £10, equivalent to about 2 years' pay for an ordinary laborer or craftsman. The explorer was feted. Soncino wrote on 23rd August that, similar to Christopher Columbus, Cabot is called the Great Admiral, and vast honor is paid to him, and he goes dressed in silk, and these English run after him like mad. On the 13th of December 1497, the explorer was awarded a pension, or salary, of £20 per year. This was to be payable for customs receipts collected in Bristol. The pension was backdated to March 1497 to make clear that Cabot was in the king's service at the time of his expedition. Despite the royal grant, Bristol's custom officers initially refused to pay Cabot his pension, forcing the explorer to obtain an additional warrant from the king. Cabot then set out on his third and final voyage at the beginning of May 1498 with 5 ships in his fleet carrying merchandise including cloth, caps, lace points, and other trifles. On the way to America for a third time, one of the 5 ships got caught in a storm in July and had to land in Ireland, but the 4 ships continued on. And, as far as we know, that's it. John Cabot died sometime in 1499 to 1500, but it's unknown whether he died at sea, died in the Americas, or returned home safely and died in England. After John's last voyage, Bristol fishermen and others from Western Europe immediately began fishing for cod in the Americas, but a colony in the Americas would not be attempted until 1585, led by one Sir Walter Raleigh. But that's a story for next time. And that's the end of John Cabot's story, but that's the beginning of our series. If you enjoyed the first episode of the series and this new type of content on my channel, please consider leaving a like and subscribing, as it helps me out greatly. Stay tuned as we will tackle the story of Sir Walter Raleigh and the lost colony of Roanoke in the next video, and that will be one you don't want to miss. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and take care. Bye.